Before I got into cybersecurity, these tools seemed impossible to learn. Microsoft Sentinel, Microsoft Entra ID, Darktrace, and ServiceNow. In this video, I'm going to show you how I use these tools on a daily basis as a current SOC analyst. If you're new here, I had zero IT background. I went from car sales to a SOC analyst in under 6 months. So let me show you what each tool actually does, how I learned it, and how you can learn them too. So first off, in cybersecurity, just a quick big picture so all this makes sense. You really honestly deal with identity and access, monitoring alerts, network behavior, incident documentation. So if you understand these tools, it's going to solve about 50% of the job. Now let's start off with Microsoft Sentinel. This is going to be a SIEM, SIEM. This stands for Security Information Event Management. There's a couple well-known teams out there. For instance, you got Splunk, and then what we use is Microsoft Sentinel. So Sentinel is when incident alerts come in. You can also run queries in them, so KQL queries. And this is where you really investigate different security events. So right here is going to be a dashboard for Microsoft Sentinel. Right here in the middle, you have all your alerts. Towards the right of this, you're going to have what we call incident event details. So from here, you do got the description, you got timelines as far as when the actual alert came in. You also do have severity. Severity is going to be from critical, you got high, medium, low, and informational. You can do all types of sorts. So you can sort by title, the created time, the different owners. Towards the right, you have, like I said, the severity. So you can actually change that from the drop down button. Still on the right side, you have status. And then right here on owner, you can actually assign it to somebody. So you can assign it to different SOC members if they're already working it, or if you're taking care of an alert and somebody else wants to jump on it, you can go ahead and assign it to them. And then from there, they can hop into the SIEM and work on their alert. I also want to touch on the left side. So the left side of this, you do have incidents, workbooks, dashboards, hunting, notebooks. For us, what we use, I use a lot of workbooks. So this is going to be, I'm going to try to break it down the easiest I can. So a workbook is going to be a KQL query put into an actual log. And from there, it's actually shown in what we call like a dashboard. So it's going to be a graphical user interface that you can actually see based off the query that is in the actual log. Let me give you the right definition because that was going to be my explanation. But based off what I have here, it's a customizable interactive dashboard used to visualize and analyze security data from various sources. So in this image here, this is when you actually jump into an actual incident. So you just have more information that is pertaining to this actual incident. So based off this picture, you do have the entities. So that's just going to be any IP addresses that you're dealing with. Any accounts, you have an account here as well. From there, you can actually click on this and it can actually take you to just sections of this particular alert. You do have a hyperlink into Microsoft 360 Defender, which I use a lot, but I'm not going to go into just because that's a whole another section and it'll probably take me a long ass time. I also want to touch on similar incidents. So if this alert has been seen in your actual environment before, you can actually view similar alerts that other people have worked on, and you can see what they came to solutions are. So if you're having trouble with this an actual alert, you can just jump into here, say, hey, what exactly did they do? And try to figure out your solution from there. One thing that I use a lot is activity log. So that's just going to be any type of notes that another person has put in or that you can put in. And this is just going to be how you came to the solution that you came to. From there, we can talk about logs. Logs right here up on the top left corner is going to be where you pretty much put any type of KQL queries. So if you're familiar with SQL, that's very similar to KQL. This is where you're going to actually put your syntax, your code for different information you're trying to obtain. So this is what you're actually going to see when you hit investigate. Now, this is a random image that I'm finding on pretty much these images I'm finding on just Google. So I'm using them, but this is pretty much what we see. So here you have the different entities. So for this image, you have, I'm assuming one person trying to access a victim PC, but you have the timeline there up at the top. You have the severity, you have the owner, you have the status. Towards the right, you're going to have a timeline. Once you hit timeline, you're going to see the timeline of the actual event with timestamps. Then, of course, you hit entities. That's going to show you the entities you're seeing on the screen. This is a pretty cool layout just because you can see where the actual incident is coming from, and then any type of users, if you do have users here as well. So I know I talked about logs, so I want to go ahead and pull up this image here. So this is what, once you hit logs, this is what it's going to take you to. So this is a very similar image to what I see on a daily basis. So this is a complex query that I'm not too sure on what it's exactly asking for based off just looking at it right here off the top of my head. But by any means, this is going to be KQL queries. So this is going to be the actual syntax for Microsoft Sentinel that you can input so you can actually obtain information. So one thing I actually use on a daily basis is it's common security log. So this is an actual table within KQL. I'm not going to get into any more further than that just because there's other details, and KQL is, I'm still learning. So we are on the rise on that. But like I said, just to wrap it up, this is where you put your syntax in. So for instance, for common security log, that's just going to show all the security events based off IP addresses, destination host names. You got destination IP addresses. You got devices. So different things like that you can find within the table common security log. So I wanted to show you this just because if you get to an endpoint where you do find a solution where it's a false positive, it's benign, it's a true positive, so something malicious is going on, you want to close these alerts based off what you actually find in your solution. So for me, typically what, of course, if you find something that's benign, you have it suspicious but expected. So something like that can be a user deleting a large amount of files from their email. Get a lot of that, and what we can do from there is just go into the user's account, see what they're actually deleting. Another one is a large transfer. So we get an alert for anything that goes over 1 gigabyte. From there, we have to go investigate, say, hey, what actually are they transferring? Is it anything sensitive? Where are they transferring to? Or who are they transferring to? And how are they transferring? Just because in our environment, transferring large amount of data is pretty much is a no-no depending on what you're actually doing and what your actually job title is. So from there, if we figure out that it's suspicious but expected depending on who the user is, then we can apply that classification to it. Next up, you have Entra ID, so Microsoft Entra ID, and this is all about identity. So this is going to be your dashboard for Entra ID. Of course, when you have right here in the middle, you have search your tenant. That's just going to be your users. So all the users within my company are going to be in this actual database. Once a user pops up and you search for it, you have different sections you can go to. So you have properties, you have monitoring, you have recommendations, tutorials. What we usually go to is properties. This is going to have a ton of information from their email address, company, their phone number, their job title, who their manager is. That is key information that we use on a daily basis just to justify an alert and what actually is going on. Another thing we use is going to be towards the left side of the screen. So that's going to be devices. I know you have app registrations that is highlighted for some reason on this image, but if you go to devices, it's going to bring up this image. And from here, this is going to be the devices that is assigned to each particular user. So for instance, if you have an alert that contains an iPhone, or if you have an alert that contains an iPad or any type of device, a desktop, a laptop, you can go into here and see which actual device is linked to a user. So you can determine, hey, this device that I got an alert on is linked to this user. Let me do some more investigation and figure out what exactly they're doing on this device. A huge thing when searching for an actual user is going to be sign-in logs. So sign-in logs are going to be what it actually is. So the times that employees are signing in to an actual environment. So based off this image, you have timestamps here, you have the user, you have the application they're signing into, you have if it was a success or a failure, and then you have any type of conditional access. Key things for us is going to be IP addresses and location. For us, if we see a IP address that's out of the ordinary from, out of the country, that's alarming. Out of the state, that's pretty alarming. We can take a deeper dive into that. And then of course, any IP addresses that are associated with that location. If you do have any type of failures, what you can actually do is hop over to audit logs. So audit log is going to be pretty cool just because this is going to be what actually happened when this user was signing in. So for instance, I'm going to kind of go through this. This is kind of confusing depending on what I'm seeing right here. But basically, what you have is timestamps, you have the service, the category, the activity. If you have a user that is getting a new device or getting a new authentication method added. So for instance, if a user is adding a new phone number, that's going to be here in this section. Pretty cool about auto logs is you can see the changes from, for instance, when a user gets a new device in our environment, you can see if a user is going from an iPhone 13 to an iPhone 16. You can see the device numbers as well. And then you can go into previous section that we talked about when talking about devices. You can see that a new device was added to that user and the list that they have. So all in all, Entra ID is very, very useful for us just because it gives us a ton of information that we can use that's linked to any type of security events. The next section I'm going to talk about is Darktrace. So if you're not familiar with Darktrace, it's basically AI. And what it does is kind of similar to Microsoft Sentinel. It provides security events. I learned this about a month into my new role as a SOC analyst that Darktrace was actually in our environment learning everything for about 1.5 to 2 years, which is pretty wild when I sit down and think about it, just because it had to learn every aspect of the whole environment to produce these type of security events. So, and it just goes back to how long AI has been on the rise. So this is going to be the actual dashboard of Darktrace. Up at the top left, you have search for devices, subnet, IP, or host names. So for us, we can search any type of IP address within our environment, and it's going to pull up every single time an IP address has been linked to a device, to literally anything you can think about when searching. Same thing for the subnet, same thing for a host. Again, this picture is from Google, and I'm using this just for informational purposes. But I think with finding different photos on Google is that you're limited to what they actually have. So, and for us in our environment, it's, of course, we definitely can't show you what we have in our environment. But I want to talk about this. So, for instance, you have an IP address here linked to Henry Jones' laptop. And what you can do is view the logs for this actual for this actual device. Pretty cool about Darktrace is you have timestamps here. You have what actually is going on. And then I know if you hover over certain things, you can see just different data that's linked to the security event or what you're trying to look up. So if I'm going based off this log, I have June 30th. You have towards the bottom is SMB read access, and it looks like it's a Excel file that he's actually reading. You have Henry Jones' laptop connected to backup04.holdingsinc.com. So you can see that unusual time for connection and a recent increase in incoming data from 10.2.0.10 port 445. So again, this is going to be very, very similar to what I see on a daily basis. And before I forget to mention, right dead smack in the middle, you have the particular devices that these logs are pertaining to. If you click on different devices or different servers and you hover over it, it's going to show you a ton of information that's very, very useful. Now, one of my favorite things about Darktrace is it has an email dashboard. So this email dashboard is connected to all the emails within your environment. Up at the top, you have a search bar, so you can search to, from, or subject. So you can put in a username, you can put in a subject. Like I said, you can put in a whole subject in there and it's going to find an email based off that. You could put it to a user, you can put from a user, or you can put from an actual company or a vendor. Now, again, this is based off AI. So what AI does is basically scans the whole email, see if there's any malicious content, like any links, any photos, any type of thing that can be malicious to an actual user. Once it's done scanning, what it does is it gives it a score based off everything that it saw in the actual email. And that's called a severity score. Very, very similar to Microsoft Sentinel and how it scores its security events. Now, if you're searching for an email, however you find it by user, to and from, or by the subject, and then you click on the email, what you're going to get is this here. So this is basically the analysis of the actual email, why it's flagging the email, and then it gives you a very, very descriptive indicators. What you can actually do is preview the email. So there's going to be a preview button so you can actually see what actually is going on in the email and if anything malicious is in there. So this particular email has a 100% score, which is very, very alarming. So you want to read the indicators, see what actually is going on, preview the email. Now, if you find an email that is 100% and that is not malicious, what you can do at the top right, you have a remediate button. You can actually release this to the user. Now, with this button, you got to be very careful just because if there is malicious content in there and you happen to release that information, then a user can be compromised. Darktrace is pretty cool just because it gives you a ton of information, and it actually for us is linked to Microsoft Sentinel. So most of the alerts we see is coming from Microsoft Sentinel, but we can actually jump into Darktrace and find the same information, if not more. Last but not least, ServiceNow. So for us, what we use ServiceNow as is a ticketing system. But if you go based off what it's actually used for, it's a cloud-based platform that automates and streamlines digital workflows across an organization. So here you have the dashboard of ServiceNow. So you have incidents towards the bottom. Right in the middle, you have different numbers. Those numbers are going to be, of course, incidents assigned to you. You got incidents SLAs, you got unassigned incidents, you got catalog tasks assigned to you. So if you click on those particular incidents within the circles, that's going to take you usually to another section. And like, for instance, if you click on unassigned incidents, it's going to take you to another section where it will have those 5 incidents laid out there. And then from there, you can assign it to somebody else. Up at the top, you have workspaces. I use that a lot. And then, of course, right next to that, right dead smack in the middle, top middle, you have service operation workspace. That actually is going to be where we can switch between different workspaces. So for us, most of the tickets that we take care of are going to be from service requests from the users within our company. And then we also have another workspace that is going to be security events. We don't really use them just because most of the security events are within Microsoft Sentinel. But if we wanted to close out a ticket for security event in ServiceNow, we can jump into that different workspace. So continuing with this, the incidents we have is, of course, you got the number, you got the description, you got the user or the caller, you got the priority. So if it's a critical, moderate, or high, you got the progress it's in, and then you got the service that it's pertaining to. Some of this looks very, very similar to what I see, but some of it doesn't. But we're going to stick with it because it's all in all the same information. So in this image, it's a dashboard, same like previous, but I wanted to show you this just because up at the top, right under ServiceNow, you got home, and then you got the different tabs. So that's gonna be useful just because if you click an incident or if you click an alert, anything, you can have multiple tabs opened. And from there, you can switch between different incidents or alerts or tickets. And if you have similar tickets that are pertaining to one person or one user, you can use the same information to close that ticket out. Now, if you open an incident or if you open a task or anything like that, this is what you're going to be directed to. So you have all types of information that you can put in here. So you have the number, you have the priority, you have the caller, you have a description towards the middle, you have any type of work notes towards the bottom. Again, this is going to be a ticketing system, at least for us. A good example for this is going to be if a user needs any type of temporary devices for any type of international travel. Now, we don't directly handle that, but they do have to put in a ticket or a ticket request to get that. And from there, we can send it to the right department so they can get those temporary devices. Another huge one is going to be vetting different apps and software or websites. So for me, I work for a critical infrastructure energy company, and all the apps, all the different software, all the different websites have to go through the cybersecurity analyst or the SOC before the user can actually download or access or get these, what they're actually asking for in the ticket. So for the software, the app, the website, there's a different vetting process that we personally do. And once we finish the vetting process, we go back into the ticket. We say, hey, we've done all our research. We've done our vetting process. We've done our verification to make sure this app, software, website is not malicious. The user can then access, download, or get that software that they're looking to get. So how did I actually learn all these tools with no IT experience? The cool thing about my company and where I got hired is they actually taught me or taught my coworkers and I all the information that we know now. There's a couple individuals that literally sat us down and went through a step-by-step process on all these tools. So I'm forever grateful for those individuals. And of course, I'm learning every single day. So there's new stuff that pops up. There's new alerts. There's new security events. You can never predict what actually is going to go on in a SOC just because there's new stuff popping up every single day. Even now, if I don't understand something, I ask a coworker, I ask my team lead, or I even ask Google and ChatGPT just because, like I said, not everybody knows everything. So it's always good to do your own research. Now, look, if you're trying to break into tech, if you're trying to be a SOC analyst, do labs around these actual tools, just because once you get a job, once you get a role, they're going to help you, and you're going to be a lot further than all your other coworkers. When doing these labs or when doing the projects around these actual tools, really understand the different concepts, just because that's going to set you apart from any other person that's trying to get that role. But even for me, I felt super behind when I got hired on to be a SOC analyst, just because I had pretty much no experience within tech. So learning these tools, I was very familiar with them, but I never worked hands-on. So learning these tools was hard at first, but I kept going, I kept pushing. If you're still listening right now, I really, really appreciate you. Do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button. I have a ton of more content coming out while I'm going through my whole cybersecurity journey. As always, guys, I appreciate you. Until next time, peace.